James,
When you babies die.
When you want
Three
to,
babies died.
And do you know how many dead babies we have on the side of this bus? Clinton Stokes died after a vaccination.
You don't know that it was vaccination.
Oh, I do.
You have to look at
I
science
certainly
now.
do.
This is
Bianca
your
Jeanette
job
Johnson
to make money
died
out of
from
this.
vaccination.
You and Wakefield,
Melanie Weber
all
died from vaccination. Every single name on this bus is a story of a family that was destroyed by vaccination. You have no sympathy for even one of them.
I have a lot of sympathy
You have
for people.
no
You
sympathy.
are making a correlation, not a cause. You're going around collecting anecdote. You know that's not science.
So
You
what?
know that you have to-
So
What is the
what? As
definition
a
of
journalist, do
fear?
you not do
What is
that?
the-
So we went up and he had his vaccination and that was fine. And he's a very active little boy. And so then everything was fine. He didn't have temperatures. There was actually no signs of anything actually going wrong. And then the next morning, I found him gone.
I walked out of there with my daughter had been immunised, and within 24 hours she started throwing seizures, and in under a week she died.
About 10 days after the vaccine, the encephalitis set in, the banging of the head, running around in circles, the screaming, walking on his tiptoes, bashing all his toys against his head.
We had the MMR at 1 year. Within 36 hours we were at the Children's Hospital at Randwick in Sydney with raging fever and 41 degrees plus. I was just sweating and on the verge of febrile convulsions.
This lady just put the needle into the top of his arm. He was in a sitting position with me, and our lives just changed from that moment on. He's just screaming. He just started to scream, and I said, "What's happening?" And she said, "You just go this way." And I said, "But what's happening?"
I filled his book in, but I couldn't put any more development because there was no more development. He went backwards. He lost the words he had. He lost the play skills. He lost the, feeding himself. He lost all that. And all he was left with was the gross motor skills. But then he started walking on tiptoes and running around in circles, and then just screaming a lot.
After Ori's MMR, when he had that first initial rush to the hospital, about every fortnight for the next 2 years, we were at the hospital with a raging fever. He was at the point of the fever being so high that he was almost passing out. He was boiling.
Right.
And as the doctors the good doctors we eventually went to see, the biomed doctors as we refer to them, said his brain was just boiling. His gut and his brain were inflamed and he was on fire. He was literally at the point where he would sit on the floor and he would spin things and go,
Just moan.
There was no language. On top of this, we had illness. We had severe asthma. We had severe chest infections, ear infections, no language.
We went from hospitals back to the doctor, and then this morning after the worst night, there was mucousy blood on the pillow, and I took him to the doctor's surgery and I said, "I'm not going anywhere till I see the doctor."
Sent me to a paediatrician there, and she said, "Look, it's very serious when a child stops speaking," because she knew more about it. And so she sent me off to the Mater Hospital, where they did a lot of tests on him to try to find out what the cause, why did he go backwards. And they did so many tests like lumbar punctures and MRI of his brain and everything to see what caused this, but they couldn't find anything that caused it. And I said to them it happened after the MMR vaccine. I told them then.
So I said to him, "Yes, he's just had his shots." And he said, "Okay, good." And I said, "Could this be a reaction to the shots?" He said, "No."
Flat out no.
No. And I said, "You sure? I mean, maybe
Flat out no.
this just happened the other day." No, just refused to talk about the subject.
And he had a listen to the baby and he said, yes, he is tight in the lungs. His breathing's different, and I think he's just got bronchitis. And I said, but he's got no cough. And this started right when I had the vaccination. And he says, I think you're imagining it. You better not be spreading, stories like that, he said. He just was swollen right from the throat down, and he had swelling, and he tried to hang on and he tried to breathe with all this swelling, but because they wouldn't listen to me, that I thought that it happened from the day of the vaccination, because they just refused to listen to that story, then they just thought it was bronchitis. And so on his death certificate, he died like he died.
They knew way back when that it was vaccines, because every time I'd tell a doctor it happened after his MMR vaccine, because he was developing normally and it happened very quite quickly, they would act real sheepish, and knowing that there was other kids coming in with similar stories. Even way back when there was kids, and now of course they're inundated. Now if I say to a doctor he was vaccinated, they don't even bat an eyelid. They never argue with me.
Right.
Never. They always actually, a lot of them say to me, you know, one of them said to me, I think I've said this before too, that he said the doctors all know. He said they all know that the vaccines are causing this. He says, but they get struck off if they do anything about it.
Then I went to SIDS, because you're told your baby died for no reason, it's SIDS. And when I got to the SIDS Foundation, every single parent, and there was hundreds of them, approached me over the course of the different times that I went there, and every one of them asked, was your daughter immunised within days of her death? And I met, and I won't say his name because I want to protect him, a leading Queensland forensic pathologist. And I said to him at the time, it's really bizarre that every mother's coming up to me and every father saying this to me. And he looked at me really strange and he took my details. He personally rang me within a couple of days at home, and he said, Carolyn, I'm going to tell you something, and I will not stand in a court of law, but I want you to know. And he's pulled out my daughter's autopsy. I've actually have a copy of it. He sent it to me as well. And he said, your daughter died from vaccine injury. And he said, and that's what SIDS is. He said, and that government knows it. But he said, I wouldn't like to think what would happen to me, and I would lose my career should I expose this publicly.
I do remember ringing the doctor who did it, who was a Buttram doctor, who has never spoken to me since, which is really interesting. But Trevor Beale, and I asked him if this was from that, and he said, don't be ridiculous.
The doctor who actually administered the shot never admitted that it was the vaccine.
Well, that's another story in itself, because she also immunised her sister's baby the same day, and her sister's baby died the same night my daughter died. Yeah. She sold her medical practice.
And she stopped practicing?
She stopped practicing.
9 months to the day that Regan passed, I had another little boy, Zach, which is bizarre, and he's obviously never been vaccinated. And my paediatrician was lovely, I have to say, on the coast. He was not pushing it down my throat. And I said to him, would you vaccinate your child if you were in my position? And he said, if I had lived through what you had, off the record, absolutely not.
Who paid for the bus? I do not make a cent from this. This is a $200,000 bus. Well, you made that up, didn't you?